Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of power in your voice, but there's 10 times more power in your silence if you use it right. See, we live in a world where everybody wants to talk. People talk just to be heard, not to be understood. But sometimes the most grown up, most wise, and most peaceful thing you can do is say nothing at all. There are moments in life when everything in you wants to speak, wants to shout, explain, defend, or just let your emotions out because the pressure is building. But if you've lived long enough, if you've been through a few storms, then you start to understand something. When emotions are high, silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's a strategy. It's self-respect in its purest form. When somebody disrespects you, when someone talks down to you, lies about you, or attacks your character, everything in your nature wants to fire back. You feel heat rise up in your chest. Your hands start moving. Your voice gets ready to go. But if you've ever let your emotions lead the way, then you know how dangerous that moment can be. You can say things that cut too deep, that can't be taken back. You can react in ways that damage relationships, ruin opportunities, and leave behind a mess you'll be cleaning up long after the moment has passed. That's why silence, calculated, thoughtful silence, is one of the most powerful moves you can make when your emotions are running wild. Silence is a choice. It's not shutting down, it's stepping up. It's saying, I refuse to give this situation control over me. See, people think silence means you didn't have anything to say, like you were scared or lost or unsure. That's not what silence means. Silence means you had plenty to say, but you were wise enough to keep it. You recognize that speaking out of anger, out of frustration, out of pain, ain't gonna fix a thing. All it's gonna do is stir the pot and make things worse. There are arguments that don't need your voice. There are people who don't deserve your reaction. Some folks feed off chaos and your silence starves them. They want you to lash out, to get emotional, to match their energy, because that's the only way they feel like they're winning. But when you stay still, when you stay quiet, when you breathe instead of break, that's when you've already won. That's when you show them that your peace is more valuable than their dream. I've learned that the strongest people I've ever met aren't the loudest in the room. They're the ones who know how to control their tongue. They're the ones who've been through enough to know that some battles just ain't worth fighting. Not because they're scared, not because they're weak, but because they've got too much to lose. You think silence is easy? It takes strength. It takes maturity. It takes real self-awareness to look at a situation and say, this is not worth my energy. This is not where I pour my soul. Silence in a heated moment is not about avoiding the truth. It's about protecting your power. It's about waiting until the storm settles so you can speak from a place of clarity instead of chaos. You can always say something later, but you can't take it back once it's been said. You can't rewind a moment and unsay words that cut deep. That's why restraint is so powerful. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your own mental health is to just stop talking. Let people think what they want. Let them twist the story. Let them misunderstand you. If you know your truth, if you know your intentions, then let your silence speak that truth louder than any argument ever could. The next time you feel like exploding, just remember that reacting is easy, but staying calm, that's power. Holding your peace while everything inside of you wants to scream, that's strength. That's growth. That's emotional intelligence. And that's how you protect your future from the damage of a temporary emotion. You won't regret staying silent in a moment of anger, but you just might regret the words you say when you don't. So learn to pause, learn to wait, learn to breathe, and most importantly, learn to stay silent when your emotions are trying to speak louder than your wisdom. There's something about having an opinion that makes people feel powerful. Social media has made it so easy for everybody to say what they think all the time about everything. But the truth is, just because you have a thought, just because you have a point, just because you have a mouth, doesn't mean you need to use it in every situation. One of the most important lessons life teaches you is that maturity is knowing when to speak and when to hold back. Not every opinion needs to be voiced. And the people who truly understand that walk through life with fewer regrets and more peace. Sometimes you're sitting in a room and someone says something you disagree with, that voice inside you is ready to jump out, to prove a point, to show you're right. But what are you really trying to do? Bring clarity or just win? What's the goal? Because if the goal is connection, peace, or progress, then the loudest person in the room usually isn't the one who gets it. It's the one who listened, who observed, who understood the bigger picture. There are moments when staying quiet doesn't mean you agree. It just means you're aware that saying something won't change a thing. You could voice your opinion, but what's it going to do? Make the situation better or just stir it up? Every opinion you have is not a mission you need to go on. Some things are better left unsaid. Some people don't want your truth. They want to fight. And if you can't recognize that, you'll spend your energy on debates that drain you and arguments that go nowhere. That's why wise people think before they speak. They understand that words carry weight. Words can heal or they can harm. And once a word is out there, you can't grab it back. It's like a bullet. It's already gone and the damage is done. You ever see people who just talk to talk? They offer their opinion on everything, how you live, how you think, what you believe. They always have something to say, but rarely anything of value. That's not wisdom. That's noise. And there's already too much noise in the world. Don't add to it. If what you're about to say doesn't uplift, inform, protect, or bring peace, maybe it's better left unsaid. Sometimes the best opinion is the one you keep to yourself, not because you're scared, but because you're smart enough to know it won't be received. There's a kind of power in keeping quiet when others expect you to speak. It throws people off. They don't know how to react to your silence. But that silence is where your strength is. That's where your clarity lives. You're not being silent because you don't care. You're being silent because you care about your peace, your energy, your time. You don't owe the world your every thought. You don't have to participate in every conversation. You're allowed to choose silence, and that choice can be the most powerful one you make. Being wise with your words doesn't mean you never speak up. It means when you do, people listen because they know if you're speaking, it matters. You've thought about it, you've weighed the consequences, and you've decided that it's worth it. That kind of presence is rare. That kind of presence is respected. It's better to be known as the one who speaks with purpose than the one who just never stops talking. Life will test your patience. People will test your silence. But if you learn to control your tongue, you'll control your outcomes. Speak when your words can improve the situation, not just when your ego wants to be heard. You don't need to prove your intelligence with every comment. You prove it by knowing when not to comment at all. Let your silence be thoughtful. Let your words be rare but powerful. And remember, wisdom is not in what you say, but in knowing when not to say it. There's a point in your life where you realize that talking about it isn't doing anything. You can explain yourself over and over. You can argue your intentions, defend your name, try to convince people to see things your way. But at some point, you learn that the loudest statement you can make is not in your words, it's in your actions. Arguing is easy. Proving yourself without ever having to say a word, that's strength. That's where your real power is. You don't have to explain yourself to everybody who misunderstands you. People are going to think what they want to think. You can spend all day trying to correct them, but if their mind is made up, your words won't change a thing. It's like trying to clean a window with muddy water. The more you rub, the worse it gets. But when you focus on what you're doing instead of what they're saying, when you keep moving forward instead of trying to fix their opinion, eventually they see the truth for themselves. They see it not because you argued for it, but because you lived it. You can't argue your way into respect. You earn that through consistency. You show up, you keep showing up, and you let your results speak on your behalf. That's how real winners move. They don't need to announce every step. They don't need to defend every decision. They let their progress speak. They let their peace speak. When someone doubts you, you don't need to yell louder. You just need to succeed louder. Your growth, your discipline, your resilience, that's your argument. That's your evidence. And it carries more weight than 1,000 words ever could. Sometimes people try to pull you into battles just to distract you from your path. They poke, they challenge, they provoke. They want you to engage because it pulls your focus off what matters. But when you stay calm, when you keep doing what you do best, when you don't respond to every little jab, that frustrates people who live off chaos. They can't control someone who doesn't need to prove anything. That's what makes silence paired with action so powerful. It's not passive, it's intentional. It says, I'm too busy building something to argue with someone who's just talking. There will be times when someone disrespects you, lies on your name, or tries to tear down what you've built. The natural instinct is to speak up, to correct the narrative. But what's more powerful is when you keep winning anyway. When your life becomes the evidence of your integrity, you don't need to say a word. People might not see it right away. Some might never admit they were wrong about you. But the ones who matter will know. They'll see how you handled yourself, how you moved forward with grace, how you didn't waste time throwing stones when you had a future to build. It takes real maturity to sit in silence and just keep working while others doubt you. It takes discipline to stay focused when distractions come disguised as arguments. But if you learn to master that, if you learn to let your actions do the talking, you separate yourself. You become unshakable. Because your power doesn't come from convincing others. It comes from knowing who you are and showing it through how you live, not just what you say. People will remember how you moved, not how loud you were. They'll remember your presence, your consistency, your results. Arguments fade, words get twisted, but actions echo. They leave a mark. They speak a truth that can't be denied. So let the world say what it wants. Let them doubt, let them question, let them criticize. While they talk, you walk. While they debate, you deliver. And that silence, that strength, that quiet focus is louder than anything you could ever say. There are moments in life when someone says something so ignorant, so shallow, or so far off the mark that it makes your whole body tense up. You hear the lie, the disrespect, the baseless opinion, and something inside you says, say something, set the record straight. But the older you get, the more you realize that some people don't want truth, they want attention, they don't want to learn, they want to argue. And in those moments, silence becomes more than just a reaction. It becomes a form of protection. Not everybody deserves your energy. Not every comment needs a clapback. Ignorance, when answered, multiplies. It feeds off reaction. The more you engage with it, the more it grows, like fire being fed with oxygen. But when you stay quiet, when you choose not to react, that ignorance runs out of fuel, it fizzles, it collapses on its own because it has nothing to stand on. There's real power in saying nothing when someone expects you to bite. You don't owe every foolish statement your time. Sometimes people speak just to provoke, not because they believe what they're saying, but because they want to pull you into their storm. They want to drag you into a place where logic doesn't matter and respect doesn't exist. And if you fall into that trap, you're playing their game. You're dancing to their tune. But when you stay silent, when you refuse to engage, you take away their power. You keep your energy where it belongs, on your peace, your focus, and your progress. It's not about being afraid to speak. It's about knowing that some conversations are dead before they start. You're not avoiding conflict because you're weak. You're walking away from nonsense because you're wise. You've got too much going for you, too many dreams you're chasing, too much healing you've done to let someone's ignorance pull you back into the chaos you've worked so hard to rise above. Ignorance often wears a mask of confidence. People will say things with boldness and volume, thinking that makes it true. But volume doesn't make something right. Confidence doesn't make something wise. And in the face of that kind of energy, arguing only adds fuel to a fire that should have died out on its own. You can let someone be loud, wrong, and proud without ever opening your mouth. You don't need to correct every lie. You don't need to challenge every fool. Sometimes the most dignified response is no response at all. When you choose silence in the face of ignorance, you're saying, my peace is not for sale. You're saying, I know who I am, and I don't need to convince anybody. You're choosing your growth over your ego. And that's one of the most powerful decisions you can make, because peace is not just the absence of noise, it's the presence of clarity. And you can't be clear-headed if you're constantly fighting battles that don't belong to you. There's a difference between educating someone who's open and arguing with someone who's closed. If a person is willing to learn, your words might open their eyes. But if their goal is to win, not to understand, your voice becomes wasted air. And that's when you have to make a decision. Do you want to be right or do you want to be free? Because freedom often means walking away from the need to always be heard. So when ignorance comes your way, when it knocks at your door, dressed in arrogance and fueled by misunderstanding, you don't have to answer. Let it knock, let it shout, let it do what it does. And you stay calm, you stay grounded, you stay silent. Because nothing protects your peace like knowing when not to speak. One of the hardest things to accept is that not everyone is ready for the truth. You can have the purest intentions, the clearest understanding, and the most honest words, but if someone isn't open to hearing it, your truth becomes noise to them. That's when silence becomes your strength. Not because you don't have something to say, but because you understand that timing and readiness matter just as much as truth itself. It's frustrating when you see someone making a mistake, walking into something they can't see coming, and you know exactly what's going wrong. You want to help. You want to say, listen to me. I've been there. But their ears are closed. Their pride is loud. Their ego is in charge. And no matter how right you are, your words won't land. They'll hear your truth as criticism, your concern as judgment, and your wisdom as interference. That's not your failure, it's their wall. And trying to push through it will only leave you exhausted. Sometimes people have to learn the hard way. They have to fall, get bruised, and feel the weight of their own choices before they're willing to listen. And in those moments, when you see clearly but they can't, your silence becomes a gift. You're not giving up on them. You're stepping back so life can do the teaching. Because life teaches louder than their words ever can. Staying silent doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough not to fight a losing battle. You care enough to protect your own peace instead of getting caught up in someone else's storm. You've got to know when to step in and when to step back, when to speak and when to wait. Not every truth needs to be spoken immediately. Some truths need space. Some truths need the right season. And until that time comes, silence is not only wise, it's necessary. There's a fine line between helping someone and forcing your truth on them. When a person isn't ready, they'll push back, they'll argue, they'll defend the very thing that's hurting them. And you'll be sitting there wondering how something so clear to you can be invisible to them. But that's the thing, clarity is personal. What you've learned through pain, they might have to learn the same way. Your experience gave you insight, but it didn't give you the right to control someone else's path. The best you can do sometimes is just be there when they're ready. It takes humility to accept that your words won't always change a situation. It takes patience to let go of the need to be understood, and it takes real strength to sit on truth that's burning inside you because you know it won't be received the way you intend. You can't save people from what they refuse to see, and you can't force wisdom into a mind that's not ready to receive it. That's why silence is not just about protecting your peace. It's about respecting their process. Let people have their journey. Let them figure it out. Let them hit walls and find their own truth. You don't have to always be the one to show them. You can love people in silence. You can pray for them in silence. You can support them without saying a word. And when they're finally ready, when their heart opens, when their pride quiets, when they look for answers, that's when your truth will matter. That's when your silence will turn into impact. There's a time to speak truth, but it's not when your voice will be met with resistance and denial. It's when the soil is ready for the seed. Until then, stay quiet, stay calm, and stay wise. The truth will wait, and when it's time, it won't need to be forced. It'll be received. There's something powerful about winning quietly, about succeeding without having to announce it, proving your worth without throwing it in anyone's face. That kind of silence after a victory speaks volumes about the kind of person you are. It means you're not driven by the need to show off. You're driven by purpose. And when your actions lead to success, and you don't use that success to belittle or boast, it says everything about your strength and your character. In a world where everyone is quick to post their highlight reels, where every achievement becomes a competition, Choosing to stay silent after a win makes you stand out. It shows you're not in this for the applause. You're not doing it for the likes or the recognition. You're doing it because you made a promise to yourself. You set a goal, you pushed through the obstacles, and you made it happen. That quiet confidence, that inner pride that doesn't need validation from others, that's rare, that's real. Victory doesn't always need a microphone. Sometimes the greatest moments in your life are the ones you don't talk about. You just keep building, keep growing, keep moving, because you know what it took to get there. You know the late nights, the sacrifices, the tears nobody saw. And when you finally arrive at the top of the mountain, you don't shout, you breathe. You take it in, you respect the journey. That's maturity. That's self-awareness. People who rush to show the world they've won often do it because they need confirmation. They want the world to say, you made it. But those who are truly secure within themselves don't need that. They're not interested in proving something to others. They already proved it to themselves. And that's all that matters. Silence after success isn't weakness, it's mastery. It means you've outgrown the need to make noise. There will be moments when people doubted you, overlooked you, underestimated you, and when you rise, when you overcome, the temptation to say, I told you so will be strong.